Hello, shiny crafty people, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Tim Totten, and today, it is going to get down to 37 degrees tonight, and I am bundling up. Now, some of you who live much further north than where I do in Florida, you're probably saying, well, Tim, 37 degrees isn't much, but you have to know that I live here in Florida, so I don't have to deal with freezing cold temperatures. And for it to get down that cold tonight, it's going to be too much. Now, I have bundled up, and I imagine if I were to go in a store afterwards or need to go somewhere and be around people, I got to wear all this and then put on a mask. Or I can just take what today's project is and fix my nose wire. And go in with my scarf mask that I made with a pre-bought scarf from the store. How exciting is this? I'll show you how to add this fantastic little section that has a filter pocket and drawstrings for your ears. So why don't you come down to the cutting table and I'll show you what we need to get going. All right, so we're gonna need a couple of things to do this. I'm gonna need some type of a scarf. Now you can make one, but I just have a scarf that I bought at a convention one time, and it's a pretty nice scarf. I have some fabric to go on the inside, and I'm gonna use this sort of white and gray because it kind of goes with some of the colors. I've also threaded my machine with white thread so that it'll match with it. I'm gonna use some toggles for the ears, and these are linked down in the description below. I use these because that way I can make the elastic a little longer, and then people can choose what size they want them to be. And speaking of, I'm going to use some elastic. I buy this elastic from that gigantic, enormous online retailer. You can buy it other places. I like this because it's a real soft jersey elastic. And then we are going to use some flexible tie material for our nose piece. This is sort of the secret, and I've talked about it before, but I buy this at Dollar Tree. So it's in the gardening section. In my Dollar Tree, they have sort of a wall section, and they have a section that's sort of behind it. Just look for this particular material like you see in the video that I just added to it. So, all right. To get started, though, we're going to need to cut a piece of this white material. Whatever color material you're going to put on the inside. And, of course, if I can find something that matched it, great. Obviously, for the one that I just took off, this black one, I used all black. And the nice thing is I added in that pocket for a filter. So I'm going to use something that sort of goes with it. It would depend on what color you use. Now, this one was like a $10 scarf that I bought from a convention where a guy named Scarf King was selling them. And then the other one, which is much bigger, I bought at Joann Fabric Store for like $6 on sale. So that was fantastic. All right. The other thing I'm going to do is I want to show you a fantastic new item that a friend of mine sent. So let's go over to the ironing board and I'll show you. My friend Ryan, who makes all of the masks that I typically wear on a regular basis, because they're really amazing. They're as good as the ones I make, and I just really like wearing something that somebody made for me as a gift. He turned me on to this iron. Okay, so he sent me this iron as a gift, and it's this tiny little thing. Look how little it is. But I have to tell you, look at all that steam it kicks out. And you don't have to flip it up on end. You can leave it right in this little thing. I'll put a link down in the description to that's all the wording underneath the video, so you can see where to buy something like this. And then I'm just going to iron a little bit of this fabric out so that I can, or press it out, I should say, or iron it. I don't know what the right word is. So that we can cut our piece. Now, our piece is going to be 10 inches by 7 inches that we're cutting, or that we're going to cut out. So I will just iron a section here, press this section, and it's really kicking seam out, which is what I like. Now this is really nice too because it's so small that it's quite portable. This is not like your big home iron necessarily, and it holds a surprising amount of water in there. They do suggest distilled water. So if you do buy one of these, just be aware that they do suggest distilled water. This is by a company called Homever. And it feels really good in your hand, actually. It feels actually pretty strong, and I feel like I could really get some pressure down on it if I wanted to push onto it. So that should be enough space there, and then I'm going to cut that apart. And then I just leave it back there. And I think it has an automatic turn off, so it'll turn itself off if you're sort of done using it and ready to move along. So I'm ready to cut a 10-inch by 7-inch piece out of this material. And of course you could mark this off with a ruler and a pen and then cut it with a pair of scissors. I prefer a rotary cutter, so I'm going to use that instead. Now I typically use this 6x24 grid, but in fact, if I get one that's a little bit bigger, and this one is 8.5x24, I could easily put my 7-inch mark. You see there's a 7-inch mark along the edge here. I could put that along the edge of the fabric and cut to 10 inches, right? And that would be a lot easier. So I'm going to use this larger one. Now the edge isn't straight over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is line up just any of the straight lines down here along the bottom edge, and then just cut that sort of straight and go at least, 10 inches. So I've done that, and that gives me this mark here that I can sort of trim off. All right, now that gives me a point, and also this has got sort of a selvage edge down here, even though it's not frayed like the other selvage edge is, but it's still the selvage edge down here. So I'm gonna actually cut this at 11 and then cut it back off later. So what I will do is put my 0 down at the bottom, put my 7 inches along the edge up there, and make sure I go past 10 inches, 11 inches. All right, then I'm gonna turn it around and put my 11-inch mark down here on that line at the bottom. And line that all the way along the 11 inches down there, and then I can cut this piece out. So it's however it takes you to get to this point is what you need to do. And now I have about an 11-inch piece, so I'm gonna trim this up to 10 inches. And there's a couple of ways. I happen to have a mat down here that has grid marks on it, so I could, if I wanted, line it up and chop an inch off at the other end if I chose to. But probably the easiest thing is to come in here and put my 10-inch mark down on this edge. So that's lined up there, and then just cut off the other end. All right, now we're not doing a mask that has any pleats in it. So we're really just creating a piece that's gonna go against your face. And what I wanna create here is a piece that I can have a folded edge to create a filter pocket. So I'm gonna fold each of these edges over 1/4 inch and stitch that at my sewing machine with my white thread. And you have a couple ways to make this 1/4 inch line. I'm going to do it just pressing it with my finger here, but you could also take it to the sewing machine and do it that way if you chose to. So I'll do them both that way, just finger pressing them together. And this is gonna be our first step, is to sew this line down here. Now I could also go over to my iron and press this if I chose to. The good thing is finger pressing normally holds in. Now I will tell you, I've been working very hard today, and my fingernails may have a tiny bit of stuff under them. Please don't complain like someone else did recently about my fingernails, because honestly, they are what they are. I use these hands, I work with them. In fact, my brother and I both have a condition where our hands always sort of look dirty. Even though they're clean, I washed them before I came out here, but they just kind of look not so fantastic. But they're hands that somebody uses, so I'm not bothered by them. I like myself. All right, we're over here at the sewing machine, and I'm gonna go ahead and stitch down these 1/4 inch ends, folds, because that's gonna just give us a nice finished edge when we fold over our filter pocket. That's the nice part about this, is that you get not only the thickness of the mask or of the scarf to be, to filter for you, but you'll get 2 layers of fabric, and you'll then also get a filter that you can put in if you want to. So I like that. We recently had our sewing machine repair guy. His name is Jim, and he drives about an hour and a half or so every month to come to us and work on all of our machines. He usually works on 7 to 10 machines at a time, and he just did work on this machine, so you can tell it's a little quieter. It's kind of great how that works. Let's go back over to the cutting table, because I want to measure out and show you how to flip and fold this. So what I want to do is lay this with the right side up, the pretty side up, because we're going to do a little flip and fold, and then we're going to And then what we're gonna do is stitch the sides down and then turn it inside out, which is great. We also need to put our elastic in before we get to that point. So what I wanna do is I wanna fold this, I wanna fold first this little part down about an inch at the top. That's gonna create the pocket for our filter. And what I've done is I've measured on my table this 1 inch. You could mark this if you wanted to, or put a pin 1 inch down. You know, you could come here and put a pin 1 inch down and then flip and fold it, but I find this to work out fine. And then eventually I'm gonna bring this up and bring it all the way, pretty much all the way to cover that. We're almost doing like an envelope style closure there. And this is gonna create about a 4-inch piece to go across your nose and mouth to cover. Now, if you thought that wasn't enough and you wanted more, you could always make this an 11 or 12-inch piece to start with, and then you'd have more room. I'm fine with this. I think this is gonna be perfectly fine for my face. If I measure my face, about 4 inches works really well, but you could make this bigger if you chose to. All right, before I go any further though, I need to put my elastic pieces on. So I've got this really finger pressed down, but you could take it over to your iron and press it a little harder. And so I know that our elastic is gonna go from this piece up to here. I'm gonna put 2 loops of elastic into it. And that way when I sew this down, it will work out to where the elastic's already handled. Now I'm gonna cut these pieces pretty big actually. I'm gonna cut them like 8 or 9 inches. And that's because whoever gets these later can decide, do they want more, they want to make them shorter, they can use the toggles that I'm gonna put on there and do that. So I'm just cutting this with my rotary cutter, and then I'll just come along. Now you wanna make sure you don't stretch this out as you're cutting it. So you gotta make it sort of even, and then I just measure with one from the other. So there's 2 of those, just like that. Now you could use clips on this. I'm just old school and use pins, and I'm not gonna be pinning through the center, so I'm not really worried about it compromising the mask in any way. I've heard some comments from people saying, oh, you put some pins right where your mouth is gonna be. I will tell you again that my main concept of a mask is that it is designed to keep you from spraying any droplets on other people. If you're trying to wear a full filter so you don't breathe anything in, well, you're gonna need something a lot more, with a lot more filtration than cotton and maybe a wool scarf. And that's the case, you need to be wearing an N95 mask underneath this. And since I'm not a medical professional, I cannot tell you what the efficacy of that is because I have no idea. All right, I'm gonna continue putting these down here. And one of the things I like to do, especially if you have flat elastic, is just to make sure it doesn't twist. You don't want it to turn in there because then you'll get twisted elastic. So I like to make sure it lays flat, and I just kind of flatten it out this way. So that, and I kind of look at it and make sure I could, if I was driving a car, could I drive on the whole surface and be standing upright over at this point? And luckily I could here, so we're in good shape. I'm gonna pin that in place again. Ooh. Now, I occasionally forget and I sew over these pins, which of course you have heard many people tell you it's a terrible idea, and I will tell you it's a terrible idea. So don't do like me, don't sew over your pins, but I like these better than Wonder Clips because if for some reason I accidentally do keep sewing and forget, I'm not gonna bust myself on a clip, I will just stitch over a needle and a pin and hopefully not hurt myself. All right, we're gonna go over to the sewing machine now, and I'm gonna stitch these 2 sides together, and then we'll turn it inside out through this filter pocket. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my needle in the down position, which I have that ability on my machine. I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I am definitely gonna back stitch over that elastic because I don't want that to ever come out. If you wanted, you could create this with a channel for the elastic, but I kind of feel like no one's gonna be wearing this more than a few months, so. All right, again, stitch back over that. Turn it inside out, let's go to the other side. All right, I actually like to do this part where all these different pieces are coming together because I wanna make sure that really is done properly. I am actually not stitching over the pin yet. Now I pull the pin out, but I wanna make sure I hold my finger down there and hold that elastic. Pull the other one out. This is actually a really fast scarf mask if you use a pre-bought scarf because, wow, it can go so quick. All right, so this is why I like one of the magnet pin cushions because I just pop them over and pick them up. We're gonna turn this inside out and we're gonna go over to the iron to do that so I can press it into position. So here at the iron, I'm gonna turn this thing inside out. And real simple, if you wanted to, I have this great new tool from Fons and Porter. It's called a machine quilter's friend, but you can use it as like a stiletto. It's called the ultimate stiletto. I use it as a stiletto or sometimes a bodkin or a turner. So I'm just gonna be real careful. I'm not gonna push too hard with that point, but I'm gonna use this in here to kind of just gently push those points out. Again, I'm gently pushing that because I don't wanna rip through the fabric where it's been stitched. And I use a pretty short stitch to get that in there. See how that's nice and pointed that corner out for me? And then I'm going to turn this. This is that envelope style that goes. Turn it on both sides like this. And I can point in there just to make sure it pulled all of the stuff out. And now I'm gonna come back and iron this, press this with my iron. Got all that steam moving. Now, I'm going to show you how not to go over your elastic, but honestly, this is jersey elastic, so it's not going to melt like other elastics. But if you have some of the braided full polyester elastic, you want to be careful you don't iron over it or press over it because you don't want to melt it. I'm a little less worried about that. Now, there we go. We've got our filter pocket, and our next job is to pin this onto our pre-made scarf. Here's our scarf. And then I want to find the center of it. So I've already actually got it folded in half. And the center is right here along this stripe of fabric. So I'll open that up. That's the center. And I'm going to lay my piece on top. But before I do that, I want to put a piece of nose wire in here before I actually sew this down, I'm a piece of that nose wire in there to give me a way to pinch it over my nose. I want this pretty close to the top because I will be putting that nose wire in there and that's going to sort of interfere with your nose a little bit. So I center this across the top of that. All right. And then I'm going to very gently come along and put just a couple of pins around the outside. Make sure I don't get I usually do this on a hard surface so that I don't accidentally pin through my nice fabric ironing board. But I'll just pop it up with my fingers. Okay, and I am gonna have to put my hands down in there, so I don't wanna put the pins too far in that I might stick myself. You could say you could pin outside, but I like being able to pull the pins out as I'm going along. That didn't catch. Try it again. Yeah, looking good. This is gonna be fun. And I'm really not that long into it. Obviously, I've been talking through the process, so if I wasn't talking, you could make one of these in a pretty short amount of time. All right, so what we're gonna do when we get back is what I do there is I'm going to put that nose wire in here and then stitch all the way around. Now at the top, I'll use a little bit wider stitch than, not a wider stitch, but I'm gonna take a little more of an allowance so that it gets around that wire that goes in. And on the edges, I'm gonna point really close to the edge. I want it to be super close to the edge so I have plenty of room for whatever filter material that I'm gonna put in there. So like I told you, this is that wire that I'm gonna use. And what's nice is it's got a hard wire in there, it's flexible, but it's got this softer outside. So it's a nice mix of the two. And it's gonna keep me from really hurting myself as if I were to stick myself with the wire, if it were to come around the fabric, but also it's going to bend really well to my face. So I'm going to cut this a little bit, not quite as wide as the entire piece. So now what I want to do is feed this up in here and get it stuck in there. So I'll open up the pocket and feed that up through the top. Now there are other kinds of nose wires you can use, and you can use whichever ones you think makes the most sense. For you may find some that you like better. There are some stick-on versions. There's some metal pieces. It's really up to you. I just have to get it to fit up in there. And once you get it into place, now you could have put that in here or glued it in here. Some people do that. They'll glue into the top. I'm really not that excited about that idea. Okay, I'm just sort of working it down with my fingers. This one's got to be pinned back on. You see it came off. Okay, it's up in the top there, and I'll just use my fingers to shove it in a little bit better. Let me pin this fabric back on. Nice. All right, I'm just gonna go over to the sewing machine and stitch this around, so why don't you come with me? We are here at the sewing machine. I like to start where that nose wire is gonna go in. That way I can put my finger in here and really get it shoved into the proper place. So it might take you a minute to really get it where you want it to go, to stay up in there. And you can pin it to hold it in place if you want. I'm just gonna kind of manhandle it with my fingers to shove it up in there. And I'm gonna go right along next to it. So as I put my machine in there, I'm running it right next to that, where that wire is. This is why I like using the padded wire, because even if I do hit the wire, it's not gonna hurt the machine, because it's gonna hit mostly the padding that's around the outside of it. So I've stitched that all in that section, and now I'm gonna edge stitch all the way down each side. So I turn it, and let's make sure we fold this stuff back properly. And now I can just stitch right down either side, pull the pins out as I go. And I'm edge stitching. You'll see that I'm not even using the whole width of the presser foot to do it. And now, because I'm not stitching over where the pocket closes, I'll still be able to open that pocket, but I do want to stitch this edge of the pocket down. All right. Look at that. And again, just edge stitching back to this point. Make sure your elastic stays out of the way. And then just back stitch there. Now, of course, you're gonna see that white stitching on the other side, but it's not terribly noticeable. Now here, you'll see I kind of fell off of that. So if I wanted, I might come back in here and take that out and pull that fabric back up a little bit. It's gonna look better, or if I like that, but I think I will take that off because I don't really like how that fit in there. All right, I fixed it so it doesn't show up so much. All right, so this part is done, and if you had made the ear elastics the right size, then you wouldn't need to worry about it. You could just send it this way, but I'm gonna add these cute little toggles onto the elastic pieces. Now, a couple things about these toggles. They have sort of two sides. You see they have one side that's very small and one side that's a little bit bigger around. So I like to go through the bigger around and come out the other, just dropped it down my shirt, out the other shorter side. So the way you do this is you're gonna grab your fabric, your elastic, and I'm gonna use the bobby pin that they send with it, with the kind that I buy. But you could use your own bobby pin. I don't have any bobby pins in my house anymore, not after the unfortunate accident. So I'm gonna use their bobby pin they sent me, or you can use a very small crochet hook, or you can take a paper clip out and stretch it out. So I'm gonna go through the larger hole, in through the larger hole, both of those pieces as I squeeze down, and pull completely across. Now this is a little bit tight to do, so if you don't have really a good, strong hand strength, find somebody in your house who does. Make it do it for them. Make them do it for themselves, right? All right, other side, same thing. I will find the center. I'm just literally gonna put that bobby pin through the middle and just sort of let it find the center there, squeeze it together, and go through the larger opening of this and pull. And you just gotta do a little bit, work it a little bit. There we go. And then now they have adjustable ear pieces that they want. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take my glasses off real quick to show this, because I'm gonna put it over my nose. I'm gonna grab the two ear pieces and put it over my ears. Pull down a little bit and then squeeze that metal piece around my nose. Look at that. Then it's just a matter of wearing this like a regular scarf, you know? Putting it around me. Oh, putting it around me. Maybe I add the hat back to it. Glasses back on. And I could have put a filter in there if I wanted to, and that covers me right here. You can literally see the line of stitching that's in there somewhere. Here, around my mouth, it's here. You can make it a little bigger, of course, you have something with a bigger face, but wow, look at that. I am ready for the crazy weather that's coming down to Florida. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial showing you how to make a a really great scarf mask that you can wear in those cold months. Give it to your friends as gifts, your family, whatever you want to do. Stay warm. Seriously, please. Stay as warm as you can. Please like, subscribe, come back to the channel for other great mask videos and awesome craft tutorials that we're doing. So stay warm, and until next time, stay crafty. Bye for now. All right, I'm gonna wear this at least twice this season because that's the only time it's gonna be cold enough in Florida for me to do it.